Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session on customer service. My name is Hemant Raj. I'm a program manager with the Dynamics 365 team, working with the customer service business application. And we'll get started. So in this session, we will cover customer service business application that is included with Dynamics 365. And this is an all-up customer service session. We'll talk about the areas of investments for customer service. We'll talk about the key capabilities that are there within the product, some of the recent investments that we have made in this area. And we'll also look at the roadmap, the future set of investments that we are making inside customer service. So with this, let's get started. We have a whole lot of areas that we plan to cover in the next 1 hour or so. So let's start with the key investment areas that we have for customer service. So I'll cover this very briefly. These are the 5 key investment areas that we have for customer service. Omni-channel engagement. So again, the idea with this area of investment is to enable support organizations to be able to reach out to their customers to provide support across one or more channels, multiple channels. And we provide out-of-the-box channels which are there within the product. And we also intend to provide an extensible framework so that ISVs or partners can plug in their external channels within the omni-channel ecosystem. With omni-channel investments, the one important thing that we are ensuring is the experience of agent is consistent as they are providing support across multiple different channels and even across multiple different business applications. Which is where it's important that agent productivity is one of the important considerations that we have when it comes to engaging across one or more channels. The interactions that an agent may have across multiple channels, so we ensure that the right set of context is always made available to the agent so that the agent is most productive. And when we talk about agent productivity, it's not just the agent, but any other persona who is involved in providing support. It could be the agent, it could be the supervisor, it could be the business admin, or any other persona who is basically either engaging with the customers directly or involved in some way or the other in terms of providing support to the customers. We also have investments around leveraging AI in order to provide assisted service. And when we talk about AI investments, it's not just focused on like virtual agents to provide assistance to customers seeking support, but we have investments lined up to use AI in order to assist the agents as well, or support personas as well, who are using the Dynamics 365 system to provide support. With the investment in service insights, we are leveraging AI in order to generate and draw insights across multiple different interactions, across the case transactional data which is present within the system. These insights can be helpful in order to monitor key support metrics, key support KPIs. Your support organization can and improve on the business outcomes using the service insights functionality and the investment area that we have. And these insights, again, in turn can help you improve your business outcome and also enable you to provide a proactive and a predictive support to your customers. So this was a quick look at the set of investment areas that we have. And with this, let's move forward and talk about some of the functionalities. Okay. So in this slide, we have summarized the key capabilities that we have within customer service, and we have sort of categorized those across 4 different buckets or categories. So we have omni-channel, agent experience, the core service management, and intelligence. So we'll cover all of these categories or areas one by one, and we'll take a look at the functionality that are there within the product, what's new, some of the recent investments that we have made in each and every category, and we'll also take a look at the roadmap. So let's get started with omni-channel. So as most of you would already know, we have traditional channels that are present within customer service, channels like email, wherein a customer can reach out over email, send a support email to the email address, and let's say with a product inquiry, and the agent can receive that email within the product, respond back, and the response goes back again over email. So that's one channel that has traditionally existed within the product. We also have the web channel or portal and different flavors of portal like the customer support portal, communities, and so on, which are already there. So with this, let's talk about the newer set of channels that we are enabling product now. Okay. So we have chat. Chat is one channel that we are enabling now out of the box within the product without any external dependency. And this is something which is currently running in preview and will go GA pretty soon. We'll talk about those timelines as well. And chat is one of the primary channel of support often, like for multiple support organizations. And with this, we are enabling chat capability that can be deployed on any self-service website or the Dynamics 365 portal. It will be possible to have like some of the capabilities that we provide with the chat functionality include setting up pre-chat questions. So before the customer initiates a chat request on a website, they can provide additional information which can be used to route it to the appropriate agent and also in order to provide more context to the agent. One can also set up post-chat surveys, which is typically used to gather feedback at the end of a chat conversation. Authenticated and anonymous visitor support. So it will be possible to handle different types of customers differently. So you can have different types of chat requests that are offered to authenticated versus anonymous users who are coming onto the self-service website. And of course, you can have the chat widget, the chat option that shows up on the website. You can design that, customize that using your own organization's themes, or you can add custom logos and so on. So this is one area of investment that we are having, which enables chat. The next channel that we are enabling is SMS. And this is also running in preview as of now. And with this, support organizations will be able to reach out to their customers over SMS, meaning a customer can simply send a text message to the support phone number, and that message will land inside of Dynamics 365. The agent can look at the issue and also respond back, and the response will again go back as a text message, and the customer will receive it as a SMS. So in order to enable SMS channel, we have integrated with a third-party SMS provider called Telesign. So Telesign will provide the SMS services, and we are shipping a pre-built out-of-the-box integrated solution that works end-to-end for SMS capability. So our customers will need to get their own Telesign subscription, and once they obtain the subscription, they can provide the Telesign account information within Dynamics, and the SMS channel will just light up for them. Okay, so the next topic that I want to quickly talk about is routing. So with the investments on the omni-channel side, we have enabled a unified routing framework. And again, the whole idea is that the routing and work distribution capabilities that we'll provide will work across all of the channels that we have. And this will bring in constructs like the capacity of the agent utilization, the presence of different agents, how many concurrent requests a specific agent can serve, like from a concurrency perspective, and some of those constructs will light up with the routing investments, and they can be used in order to set up routing rules for handling and managing inbound requests. Next, quickly talk about agent and supervisor experience. So we are investing in optimizing the agent and supervisor experience when it comes to interacting across some of these messaging-based channels, chat and SMS. So we are enabling a multi-session agent experience, both on USD and web, and we'll talk about the multi-session agent experience of web in a while. And this is something that will equip the agent to handle multiple customers, multiple different conversations in parallel while interacting. We'll also have real-time dashboards for personas like supervisor or managerial personas. They will have insights into what's going on, what kind of conversations are going on, and they'll be able to either like silently monitor the conversations that are going on across different channels, or the supervisor can also go ahead and open a specific conversation, whisper to an agent silently, and even barge into a conversation when needed. So some of these scenarios we are enabling with the supervisor experience. And we also have sentiment analysis across different channels that we are enabling. So we are investing in AI-driven sentiment analysis that will also show up for the supervisor in the supervisor dashboard. So the supervisor will know what is happening within the contact center and take an appropriate action. And this sentiment will be based on the messages sent by the customer, and to begin with, it will not include any messages which are sent by the agent. Okay. The next one is bots, which is again an important area of investment within Omnichannel. Bots is something which is currently supported. There are a lot of customers who are using Microsoft Bot Framework to enable bot with customer service. With this investment, it will be possible to enhance some of those scenarios and make it work with Omnichannel, meaning for scenarios, let's say if the bot is not able to address a customer support inquiry and the customer request cannot be fulfilled, the bot will be able to escalate the request or transition the request to a live human agent. So this is one important scenario that we will support with the investments around bot integration. The whole bot transcript will be made available within Dynamics 365 in CDS. So it can be used for post-analysis, and it can be used for fine-tuning the bot based on the learnings that you may see by looking at the transcripts. And we are also working on Dynamics 365 Virtual Agent, which is currently running in preview, and I'll talk more about that. So that will also be integrated out of the box with the Omnichannel stack. One important thing that I did not mention is bots can be deployed on any channel that we support out of the box. So it's not limited just to chat. It can be deployed on SMS as well. The next one is channel integration framework. This is where channel extensibility comes into picture. If there are channels that you need to integrate with the Omnichannel ecosystem, channel integration framework is the story around there. So using SIF, it will be possible to embed your own communication widgets. For example, most of the customers are using a CTI telephony widget and embed that within the channel integration framework, which can talk to Dynamics 365. So it will be possible to, let's say if you're talking about telephony as an example, it will be possible to embed CTI telephony widgets within the Dynamics 365 application using channel integration framework, and that can pass context to the Dynamics 365 side. There can be automation that can be set up so that the agent doesn't have to flip back and forth between the CTI provider as well as Dynamics 365. So scenarios like inbound call receiving, screen pops in order to show information, and even outbound calls will be supported with this. With this, let's quickly take a look at one of the demos that I have on channel integration framework. Okay. So I have logged into Dynamics 365 Customer Service Hub, and what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and make a call to one of the phone numbers that I have set up for this support. So as soon as I make a call, based on the phone number that I'm calling from and based on that information which is present within the contact records in Dynamics 365, I get a screen pop with the customer name. So I can accept, and what this will do is this will automatically show the contact form, again purely based on the mobile phone that I'm calling from. And this is like one example of how automation can be established. We have seen multiple times customers have a CTI integration, and that runs in isolation of Dynamics 365. So the agents have to flip back and forth between the Dynamics application as well as the telephony system, which takes a huge hit on the agent productivity. So with some of these automation scenarios, that will get resolved significantly. So I can also take notes. Let's say if I take in some notes while talking to the customer and I want to create a case. So let me put in some case title, let's say issue with laptop. So one thing that you can notice is whatever notes I took on the right side, they are automatically captured as a part of the case description. And I can simply hit save and the case will get created. So if I hang up on this phone call, you will see a phone call activity as well gets created automatically, and the information about the phone call activity is also made available in the communication widget on the right side. And if I click on this link, you will see the phone call activity is automatically associated with the customer, Paul, and the notes that I have taken over here are also captured within the phone call activity. So this is like a quick example of how, like using the standard set of APIs, the communication widget can be integrated with Dynamics 365. You can enable various scenarios in terms of building automation or passing information from the communication widget to Dynamics 365. This is just one demo integration, like one sample integration that we have done for demo, when we are creating a case with some pre-filled values, we are creating a phone call activity, we are auto-capturing the notes and so on. But there are plenty of scenarios that can be enabled using this integration. Okay, let's switch back to the slides. Oops. Okay. So we have worked with a number of channel providers. So the channel providers, some of the names that you see over here, so they have created an out-of-the-box solution with the channels that they offer, and they are using channel integration framework along with Customer Service Hub, and they have created an out-of-the-box solution that works with Dynamics. We also have a number of channel integrators who have also built out-of-the-box solution that works with one or more channel providers using channel integration framework. So if any channel that you are interested in, I would recommend reach out to some of these channel integrations or providers if needed. If you want to know more about how the out-of-the-box solution with any of the channels would look like, that would work seamlessly with Dynamics 365 using the framework that we provide. Okay. So with this, let's go to the next one and quickly look at the roadmap or the upcoming investments that we have on the omni-channel side. And again, like the way I've structured this presentation is that we'll look at each and every category of investment, and we'll look at the current set of capabilities, what's new, and roadmap for every different segment. So for omni-channel in wave 1 until October, so we have capabilities that are running currently in preview: chat, multi-session agent experience both on web and USD, the agent and supervisor experiences, routing and work distribution framework. So all of these will go GA in July timeframe, and SMS is something which is already available in preview, that will continue to be available in preview. Okay. The bot integration story, bring your own bots, working with omni-channel for escalation or context transition scenarios, that will also be in July timeframe. The next set of investments, wave 2 starting October 1, this year, include channels like social messaging over Facebook Messenger, which is something that we plan to enable out of the box within the product. Escalation to voice and video. So the scenario around here is there is a live chat conversation which is already going. Can the agent or the customer request for a transition to voice or video on top of chat? So these are some of the channels that we are looking to enable within the product in wave 2 set of investments that are upcoming. Next, which is again an important one, is channel integration framework enhancements. So we are making a ton of enhancements in SIF. Channel integration framework was released early this year, and in wave 2 we plan to make a lot of investments to so these investments will be purely optimized from a blended agent perspective. It will be possible to have multiple different channels or providers embedded within the same application for the agent. So the agent will have an option to work across multiple different channels, external channels which are plugged into the omni-channel ecosystem using channel integration framework. So those are some of the scenarios or enhancements that we are looking at to enable with SIF enhancements. Another set of enhancements that we are looking with channel integration framework is support for session management or tab management, and providing APIs so that some of those can be managed automatically or programmatically. So we'll provide more and more flexibility in terms of how the layout will render, and more flexibility in terms of controlling the layout, the sessions, the tabs through programmatic ways. The next set of investment is around the routing. Okay. The routing framework currently works on constructs like capacity, presence, and so on. So we plan to introduce skill-based routing as well. So it will be possible to model skills for agents and route inbound requests originating from one or more channels to agent based on their skills. So this is one important area of investment that we are making. And the intent is to have this available in preview within the Wave 2 timeframe. Proactive chat, this is lighting up the proactive chat scenario that we already have. So when I say proactive chat, this is how you want to light up chat as a channel on your website or on the Dynamics 365 portal. So you would be able to set up business rules, and these business rules could be based on, let's say, only if the customer has read a few knowledge articles or spent X number of minutes browsing through the portal, only then you want to offer chat as an option. Let's say if the customer has only gone through a specific set of flow on the website, only then you want to enable chat as an option and offer that to the customer. So some of those scenarios will be enabled with the investments around proactive chat. So again, we plan to have this enabled in preview in the October wave of investments and Wave 2 set of investments in that time frame. I've also included a link to the release notes for Wave 2 investments that were published this morning. So feel free to look at those as well, that they provide like a plenty detailed view of some of the upcoming investments that we have within Dynamics. Okay. So with this, let's go to the next segment, which is around agent experience. And within agent experience, we'll pretty much talk about these three elements: Customer Service Hub, which is a unified base interface available for agents as of now. We'll talk about USD, which is the agent desktop solution that most of us would already know of. And we'll also talk about the multi-session web experience that is new, which will be enabled with the set of channels that we are enabling. So let's jump into these. How many of you do not know about Customer Service Hub at all? Is there anyone in the audience? Okay, then I can quickly go through this slide maybe. So CSH, again, like just to briefly summarize, it is built on the unified interface stack that is provided by Dynamics 365. It has role-tailored dashboards with powerful visual filters to look at data, transactional data, which is present inside of Dynamics 365 around customer support. It is possible to manage cases and do complete case management from within CSH. You can look at cases. You can use business process flows to guide the agent across the case lifecycle. We have a timeline view which you can use to look at interactions between the customer and the support organization. Look at related information, related cases, or related entitlements for a customer in the reference panel that we provide, and you can also do knowledge search while working on a case record. You can also author and manage knowledge articles from within Customer Service Hub. Just a quick overview, we have like rich text knowledge article capabilities, so you can author rich content. You can also preview how the content would look like across different devices and form factors. We provide the complete knowledge management lifecycle within the product, and we also provide rich interactive dashboards that can be used by knowledge managers or content managers to look at what kind of knowledge articles are present in the system and what their state is and so on. Let's go talk about USD a little bit. And in USD, we have, so before talking about what's new, let's quickly look at what USD is for the sake of people who do not know about it. So this is an agent desktop solution that we ship with the product. This is a thick client that needs to be installed on local machines of the agents in a contact center. And the value proposition that USD brings to the table is automation or integration with multiple LOB applications. So typically in a contact center, we have seen agents need to browse through multiple different applications, which could even be more than 10. So they would have like multiple different browser tabs or application tabs that they'll have to flip through and manage while interacting with the customer. So with USD, it is possible to automate some of those, provide information from across multiple different applications, LOB apps, in a single unified console. And that helps improve agent productivity significantly. So we have like customers who have seen like tremendous performance improvements simply by reducing the number of clicks that the agent would need to go through without using USD. It has session management capabilities, so the agent can talk to multiple people at the same time, and USD would handle all of those customer sessions automatically. The session within the context within each session would always be preserved. We have call scripts or agent scripts that are within USD to guide the agent through the interaction. So again, these scripts can span across multiple LOB applications as well, and not just restricted to Dynamics 365, which is one value proposition that USD brings onto the table. Centralized management, the entire USD configuration can be centrally managed from within Dynamics 365. The pages that show up on USD, what applications it needs to integrate with, how the notifications would show up, what happens when a new session gets created, what all tabs show up over there. So all of those layout, integration, and multiple aspects of USD can be centrally managed by the admin from within Dynamics 365. And of course, it can be integrated with multiple different channels of your choice, and traditionally USD has been supporting some of these scenarios. Okay, so a quick look at what's new on the agent experience side. So we have the recent version of USD that was released, USD 4.1. It provides support for Chrome. So traditionally USD has been using Edge and IE for hosting pages. So now we have enabled support for Chrome. And there are a few customers who have started using Chrome in their organization, and they have reported like significant performance improvements that they have seen purely by switching to the Chrome process that we have enabled. So we have single sign-on also enabled in USD. So before this, the agents had to log in to USD first, and then they also had to log in the second time onto Dynamics 365. So that will no longer be the case. The agents just need to log into USD once, and that will log them to the Dynamics 365 application as well. We have enabled a UCI-based admin application. So we have created a modular application using which USD can be managed completely. And we have also added capability around stacked notifications. So for blended agent scenarios or even otherwise, if there are multiple notifications that need to be sent to the agent, it is possible to stack them one after the other, and the agent can pick those up and start responding to those. On the CSH side, we have done few usability enhancements. So if you notice in this screenshot, we have the header and we have the business process flow. And as you scroll down, you will notice that the header automatically collapses, just so that there is more white space which can be used for the form to render with a lot more data. We have also improved the background color, the fonts, the styling. There used to be blue tabs that would show up previously for every section within a form. So all those things are improved now. The next one is multi-session agent experience. This is a big investment that we have made, which will line up with our omni-channel stack. So we are providing a new application which will enable multi-session web experiences for the agent while they are interacting with customers across any one or more channels. This will be consistent, as I had mentioned. One of the goals for us is to make sure that the agent experience across multiple different channels is always consistent. So we are ensuring that in this specific application that we are including. Okay. So with this in mind, let's go ahead and look at the live product and a couple of demos that I want to show. Okay. So in this demo, I am logged on to the self-service website. This is the communities portal powered by Dynamics 365 portals, and I have logged on to this portal as Abby, who is one of the customers, and I need some support related to the printer that I have purchased from Contoso Electronics. So I go on to the support website. I am offered chat as an option over here. So I click on this, and it will initiate a chat conversation. So what we have done in this system is we have created a bot, and the first interaction will be handled by the bot. It will not directly go to the live chat agent. This is how we have set up the system over here. So let me type in some information over here that I need help setting up my printer. So the bot will ask me more details. What is the product name or serial number? So let me go ahead and provide that information. So it's asking me to provide more context, more information that the bot can leverage in order to help me. So let me provide that I'm facing issue with printer connectivity and what type of OS I'm using. It's Windows. And what kind of, again, this is the last question. What is the status of one of the lights? So it's blinking. So now what the bot will do is it will look at the Dynamics 365 knowledge base and try to look for a knowledge article and present that to me. So let's say if I'm not happy with the knowledge article, if I go through it and I just say that I want to talk to an agent. So the bot will pick that queue and try to connect me to a live chat agent. So if I go to the agent side, I should be getting a screen pop for the chat request that got escalated from the bot. So let me go ahead and refresh this. Okay. Okay. So for some reason the screen pop did not show up, but the screen pop would clearly indicate that this is an inbound request. It is escalated by a bot. This is not coming directly from a customer. And if you notice, as soon as the agent would accept the chat conversation, the entire transcript between the customer and the bot is already rendered so that the agent can read all of this information and get up to speed. So again, reading all of this transcript can also be time consuming for the agent. So in this case, what the bot also did was, the bot also summarized the information for the agent to quickly look at. So the product that I was having an issue with, what was the issue, OS, the topic, and so on. So this is just one example that we are showing in this demo. The whole idea is transfer of context from the website to the bot and then to the agent who is addressing the customer or interacting with the customer. So in this example, the bot was able to transfer all of the context based on the interaction to the live chat agent. It is possible to have any custom context also transferred to the live chat agent on the omni-channel side, and the bot can also pick up that context and act accordingly. So the context could include, let's say, the knowledge articles that the customer was browsing through, what were the forums that the customer looked at, basic navigation history available on the portal, or any of the customer journey patterns, so they can be translated to context and passed on to the omni-channel side. So this is one strong capability that we have enabled within the system. The other thing that I want to talk about over here is the way bots are modeled on the omni-channel side. They are modeled as agents, which gives a lot of flexibility on how you can set up routing rules. So in this scenario, we routed the inbound request directly to a bot. It was not routed to an agent. Whereas, let's say if I end this conversation, and close this. So let's say if I initiate a new conversation, in this scenario, I'll be routed directly to the agent, and there won't be any bot coming into the picture as well. So we have a lot of flexibility on how those routing rules can be set up. You may want to route in certain situations to the bot, or you may want to route in certain situations directly to an agent. So modeling bot as an agent will give a lot of those flexibility, open up a lot of similar scenarios on how you want to reroute conversations within the omni-channel stack. Another scenario that we have seen people enable using this kind of a model is, let's say there is a live chat interaction that goes on, and after the live chat interaction, you want to pass on the request to a bot, and the bot can, let's say, deal with the post-chat survey or interact with the customer to get more feedback. So it will be possible using this modeling all the agent would need to do is agent would need to transfer this to a bot queue, and the bot will be able to pick up that conversation and continue the conversation from there. So bot need not just be the initial line of defense. It is possible to route conversations to bot in the interim after live chat agent has interacted with the customer as well. So all of those scenarios can be enabled based on how we have modeled bots in the system. Let's take a quick look at some of the productivity tools that we have. So by the way, this is the multi-session agent experience that we are looking at in the web browser. And the agent has a lot of flexibility on what the agent can do in the conversational panel. The agent, of course, can send and receive messages. The agent can also use templatized messages or quick replies to respond back to the customer, transfer the entire conversation to a different agent, transfer to a different queue. So let's say if you have a bot which is tied to a queue, if you transfer it to a specific queue, the bot could pick up the conversation and continue that. It's also possible to search for knowledge articles, consult with a different agent or a supervisor, mark a message as public versus internal. So if there are multiple agents or supervisors which are present within a conversation, if I choose to send a message as internal, the end customer will never see that response. Only the internal support staff will be able to see that. So some of those capabilities are enabled over here. And I won't go through all of these. Omni-channel will be covered in detail in a separate session, wherein we'll show multiple different scenarios around supervisor, around transfer, consult, and so on. One quick thing that I want to show while we are over here is, let me go ahead and send out a text message to the support phone number from my mobile. So the way we have set up the routing rules over here is any inbound request which is coming from SMS channel will also be routed to this agent. So if I provide a response, the response will, I will receive the response as a text message on my cell phone. So a few things to note: the agent experience is consistent as I was looking at a chat request as well as a request originating from SMS. As I accepted the request, the inbound request, there's a new session that gets created, and I can easily flip across multiple different session tabs, and the context within each and every session will always be preserved. The other thing that I would like to point out over here is we looked at two different channels. One was chat and one was SMS. Chat is a real-time mode of engagement, which means that both the customer and the agent would need to be available at the same time. Whereas SMS that we looked at is an async mode of engagement. So both the customer or the agent need not be available at the same time. The conversation can have a longer life cycle. It can even span over a period of multiple days. So for the agent, while addressing a request over SMS, the agent can simply close the current session and come back on any other day, open the session over there, and then continue the conversation. So that's something that we are enabling with SMS to begin with, and the same concept will continue for other messaging-based async channels like Facebook Messenger and so on. So the whole idea or the key point that I want to bring out over here is both real-time and async mode of engagements or communication are enabled within the product as of now. So again, just talking about the multi-session agent experience very briefly. So we have the session tabs that we see on the left side. This is the session panel. We also have app tabs that we see within a specific session. So I can have multiple different app tabs that show up. And let's say if I go to this SMS interaction, and if I want to look at this contact record, so I can simply do press control and click on that link, and it will open that up in a new app tab within the same session. So I can have multiple app tabs within a session, and if I switch across different sessions, the context will always be preserved. So for example, just to show that real quick, if I create a new contact, I can do that in a separate app tab. I did not navigate away from the complete session management experience that I'm facing as of now. Let's say if I add something over here and I flip back and forth, the name or the unsaved changes will always be preserved even if I switch session tabs. So those are some of the enhancements, capabilities that we are enabling with the multi-session experience. Okay, so with this, let's switch back to the slides and continue our presentation. Okay, so talking about the roadmap on the agent experience side, so we have enhanced search experience that is coming up as a part of the Wave 2 set of investments. So as of now, an agent, while interacting with a customer over chat or over SMS, has search capabilities. So one scenario that we are enabling with the channels is, let's say if there is an anonymous request, so the agent can simply search for account, contact, or cases within the system and tie that inbound request with an existing element. So with the enhanced search experience, we'll provide capabilities to handle more complex business scenarios. We'll expand the search capabilities to custom entities as well, and we'll expand that to also include custom fields in a specific entity. So, and this is in addition to some of the UX improvements that we may end up doing as well as we get more feedback during the preview. The next one is agent scripts. So for those who are familiar with Unified Service Desk, which already has call scripts, so we want to bring in the similar concept within multi-session agent experience as well by enabling call scripts over there. So this can go a long way in guiding the agent as the agent interacts with a customer on one or more channels. Macros is another capability that we are looking at for Wave 2 set of investments. So this will provide the ability to automate repetitive tasks in a single click. So for example, if the agent needs to select an article, copy the link of the article, and send that link over email to the customer. So if the agent were to do that, it will involve a multiple number of clicks. So I mean, these are some of the scenarios that we want to enable and automate through macros. So I can simply write a macro, and all the agent would need to do is select an article, click, and it will automatically copy the URL and send it out over email. So this is just one small scenario. There could be multiple other scenarios that could be lit up using the macros capability that we plan to enable. The next one is notifications. We'll provide more flexibility on how notifications can be customized. Notifications could be based on record assignment or inbound support requests on one or more channels. How the notification would show up, what all information will show up on the notification, whether the information is pulled from Dynamics 365, and even the context information that I spoke about. So some of those can also be made a part of the notification UI. So we are looking at some of those investments in the Wave 2 timeframe. The next one is navigation history that I spoke about briefly. While it is possible to pass all of this information from a website in the form of a context, we plan to enable certain scenarios out of the box, given that we already have a Dynamics 365 portal that we ship. So the idea is to enable some of these scenarios work seamlessly out of the box as soon as you sign up for some of these offerings, to work at least on elements like knowledge base or communities and so on. Okay. With this, let's move to the next section around service management. Okay, so a quick look at the service management capabilities that we have. Case management, we all know we have enterprise level case management capabilities. You can manage case hierarchy, set up parent-child case relationships, merge similar cases that are together in a single click, also preserving the interactions across multiple similar cases that may get merged together. So some of those scenarios we already provide. We also have case routing, so you can set up routing rules to route cases that are getting created from one or more channels. And those routing rules can look at the properties of the case and then route it appropriately to an agent or a queue. And it's possible to automate case routing based on the rules, and the agent will also have an option to manually route a specific case, in which case it will look at the active set of routing rules and take an action. The system will do it for the agent. We also have entitlements which can be used to track the amount and type of support the customers are eligible for. And you can also have channel specific entitlements. So if a case is getting created through email or through phone, you can also track the support eligibility of a customer differently for different channels. And this is mapped to the case origin field that is there within the product. You can also associate this to contacts, which is specifically around B2B scenarios. So let's say if you have an entitlement set up for an account and you want only a certain set of contacts to be able to claim the support entitlement or claim support on behalf of that account. So you can manage some of those scenarios using the contact relationship. So the system will enforce some of those rules when the agent is dealing with cases. You can also associate this to products. So if you have different products in the system and you want to offer different support terms, even for a single customer across multiple different products, so those can be enabled as well using entitlements. SLAs, again, it's a great way to track support KPIs. We ship two different KPIs, first response and case resolution. You can set those KPIs, which means that you can define in how much time the case needs to be resolved when it got created, or in how much time the first contact needs to be made with the customer after the case got created. You can also set up failure actions, warning actions. Let's say if any of these KPIs do not meet, do you want to send an email, escalation email to the supervisor, or you want to mark the case as escalated, or you simply want to send a warning email to the owner of the case. So all those scenarios can be easily enabled. We also have pause and resume SLAs. So let's say if the case is put on hold or is waiting on customer, the SLA KPIs would automatically get paused and they would automatically resume as soon as the case goes back to the original state. So some of those scenarios are already possible using SLAs. Queues, we know it is a good way to organize, prioritize, and monitor the progress of the work. And in future, we are also unifying the queues that are coming through the omni-channel side as well as the CDS queues. So they will all be unified together starting July timeframe. We have a concept of public and private queues. It will control the visibility that the agents would have on the work items which are sitting in one or more queues. Knowledge management we talked about briefly, so let me skip this one. The next one is ARC, automatic record creation and update rules. This is something that can be used to take action on activities that get created within the system. So for example, if you want to enable email to case, automatic case creation from inbound emails which are sent to the support email address, you would need to go into automatic record creation and update rules and create a new rule. And this is a lot, there is a lot of flexibility, and if you just look at the UI, you won't be able to know about it. So for example, it can handle B2B scenarios also really well. So if let's say an email is coming from a contact and that contact is associated to an account, so you can even look at the properties of the account and then decide whether or not to create a case or the properties with which the case needs to be created. So you can not just look at the properties of the incoming email, but also look at the properties of the contact who is sending the email, or even the parent account of that contact as present within Dynamics in order to configure some of those rules. So a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can leverage automatic record creation rules. The last one is service scheduling. So this was released pretty recently. This is now leveraging the URS, Universal Resource Scheduling, and this can leverage some of the resources like employees, facilities, equipments, and you can use those to schedule service activities. Let me go to the next one and really quickly look at the roadmap for service management. So the first one is timeline enhancements. So we are looking at improving the timeline control. We plan to reduce the amount of white space and provide more information in the amount of space that it has. Filtering capabilities, we intend to provide more options. You should be able to filter based on the type of activity, based on the time frame, based on the status, and so on. The ability to view an activity within the timeline UI itself and not having to go away to lose the entire form. Those are some of the capabilities that we are also looking at. And not just view the activity, but also create an activity inline which will only expand to the width of the timeline control or to the size of the timeline control. So that's an important area of investment. Around knowledge management, we are making a bunch of investments. Some of those include knowledge article templates, the ability for agents to rate internal knowledge articles or knowledge articles that they would see and provide feedback on. Auto filtering based on entity fields. So you can define mapping between the case entity field and the knowledge article. So for example, if you want to filter down or search on knowledge articles which are only related to a specific product, you can do that by creating that mapping and applying that auto filtering logic. Inline images is a big one. So there won't be a need to have images which are placed elsewhere and just have references within the knowledge article. We plan to have images that can be embedded within the knowledge article itself without any external reference. And of course, like drag and drop editor when it comes to managing images within the knowledge article, and also rendering enhancements. So right now we see the knowledge article, if let's say I'm an agent working on a case, searching for a knowledge article, the knowledge article results will show up in the knowledge pane that I see on the extreme right side on the case UI. So we plan to make some of those enhancements as well, the ability to expand the knowledge search UI so that they have multiple columns, they can quickly filter and easily search for more content over there. There is a big investment around SLAs as well. SLAs will have a lot more flexibility now. The first one is moving of SLA authoring experience to unified based experience. So this will be included within CSH, Customer Service Hub now, with the Wave 2 set of investments. There are additional flexibilities. So one is you will be able to integrate like author a flow, and then flows can be used to trigger more actions. So again, flows, Microsoft Flows has a lot of connectors. It has like hundreds of connectors that can connect to multiple different services. So this is one key investment that we are making to be able to author flows and unify them with SLAs. So you will no longer be restricted by the actions that workflows traditionally would support. So for creating custom actions, you would typically need to write code or plugin. With the integration of flows, all those things will ease up for you. There won't be the need for having a developer to enable multiple different scenarios will reduce tremendously. The next thing, which is again a big one, so far we had SLAs that could start from a specific date or time. So for example, on a specific case, if I am looking at multiple KPIs, all those KPIs will be calculated from one specific date field, which is typically like when the case was created. But now you can have multiple different SLAs which are running in parallel on a specific case record. So as an example, if I want to track first response case resolution, I can continue to do that. But if I also want to track, let's say, another KPI around escalations, so only when the case gets escalated, starting the date or time when the case was escalated, I want to track in how much time the case gets resolved. So I can also track that same KPI in parallel along with the rest of the KPIs on the case record. So that's one big enhancement that will come up on SLAs. The next one is automatic record creation and update rules. So this will also be integrated with Microsoft Flows and will be enabled on the UCI, Unified Interface Stack. So that was for service management. Let's go to the intelligence side and talk about some of the investments that we have made. So this is on the omni-channel side. We have enabled real-time sentiment that will be made available to the supervisor dashboard, which we talked about briefly. The next one is historical insights. So we are using the sentiment analysis and so again, like it will not just work on the current transactional conversation data. We'll also provide the sentiment journey of one or more interactions in a rich analytical dashboard. So for example, in this screenshot, you are looking at sentiment over the past 1 week and how the sentiment journey has been across the past 1 week of time frame, how the sentiment has been across multiple different queues, and even the sentiment across interactions handled by different agents, which is the last chart that we see. So by looking at the last chart, I can quickly determine who are the agents who would need more coaching opportunities and corrective measures, like agents for whom the sentiment trend has been consistently low for the past 1 week or so. So all of those scenarios will light up with this historical insights dashboard, which will also leverage sentiment analysis. The next one, again, it's a big investment that we have made, customer service insights. This is something that went GA last month, and This is very easy to adopt. So it will provide insights into case information, case transactions, and other interactions that are present within Dynamics, and you would get a lot of custom KPIs, custom metrics that are critical for your business. Again, we have authored those dashboards and analytics and views and set up those KPIs based on industry standards and standard metrics that typically contact centers would monitor. It's very easy to adopt. If you have an organization, you can simply sign up for customer service insights and have that set up for your support organization in less than 5 minutes. And one key capability that is lighting up with this customer service insights investment is topic analysis. So what we'll do is we'll use AI in order to cluster cases automatically into different topics or segments. And these topics again can be looked at with multiple pivots. You can look at how the customer satisfaction has been across different topics. We'll also provide capabilities wherein you can provide feedback to the AI engine or the AI logic. So you can drill down into a specific topic and look at the cases which are associated to a topic and provide feedback whether that specific case was tagged appropriately within that topic or not. And the next time the AI engine will start clustering, it will take into account any inputs that are provided by users. The next one is virtual agent for customer service. This is currently running in preview and will show, and this will go GA in the next wave of investments. So this is bots or virtual agents that we are providing within the product. It will enable you to create bots and deploy them to your website with a zero code experience without the need of having a data scientist or a developer. So we will provide a graphical interface using which you can author your own bot and deploy it on your website. It will be possible to monitor and improve on the bot performance. We'll provide rich analytics and dashboards using which you can determine like how the bot conversations are going, whether they are getting escalated or whether they are getting deflected successfully. And one key capability that we have is integration with Microsoft Flows. So bots will be able to take actions that are powered by Microsoft Flows. So this will open up a lot of scenarios around how you can connect your bot to multiple different services that bot already has connectors around. So again, we have multiple sessions both today and tomorrow, which are covering customer service insights and virtual agent. And I have a list of some of those sessions in the next slides, which you can look at. So I would encourage you to take a look at some of the in-depth session on customer service insights and virtual agent during the conference. A quick look at the roadmap. So we will invest in integrating the virtual agent with Omnichannel. We looked at the demo wherein a bot conversation was escalated to a live chat conversation. So the same will be enabled using the D365 virtual agent that we are enabling. The analytics view that we looked at for sentiment, we will enhance those to include external channels as well. So if you were to integrate your own channel within the Omnichannel ecosystem, the analytics and real historical analytics and reports will start looking at information from those external channels as well. Sentiment analysis enhancements. So these include support for additional languages. So as of now, it works on English only. So we'll expand the language support on that front. We will also improve the sentiment capability by providing that information to the agent as well. That is one. And we'll also provide API so that you can look at the sentiment analysis information for a real-time conversation that is ongoing and also take corrective actions. The last one is bot-assisted agent guidance. So this is where we want to leverage AI in order to help the agent as well. So scenarios like, let's say if based on the conversation that is happening on any channel, the AI system could suggest the agent to look at a specific knowledge article which might help resolve the conversation. Or the AI engine or the virtual assistant could suggest, do you want to look at this case which is similar to the conversation that is currently happening. Other scenarios could be, let's say if the sentiment is going down, the bot or the virtual assistant could suggest the agent, do you want to consult to a supervisor, with a supervisor for this ongoing conversation. So some of those scenarios we are looking at when it comes to using AI in order to assist the agent. So this was what I had on the customer service side. So we have deep dive sessions for all of these topics, omni-channel, agent experience, and intelligence. And I would recommend you to attend some of those. This is just a list of the customer service sessions that we have in the conference, both today and tomorrow. Thank you so much. I hope that was helpful and provided you some information on the investment that we are making. If there are a few questions, I can take those up now. Yes. Can you? It would be great if you can come down to the mic.
One quick question. So I would like to know if the SMS functionality will be available worldwide, or it's only US, or how this will work.
So it will be available worldwide over the next few months. We are expanding the set of countries where SMS is supported, but you would be limited with the set of countries that Telesign would also support. So I know Telesign has a broad coverage worldwide. So whatever countries Telesign would support, you can simply enable SMS in some of those regions. Yes. So yes, the short answer is yes. We will plan to expand the SMS support to worldwide, different other countries. So we'll publish some of that information over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, thanks. I guess I'll have to. Any other question before we log off? Yeah.
I have a couple of questions here. So can we use, are we going to have omni-channel in tablet application? And can we create any other custom entity records from phone activity other than case or incidents? Can we attach files to chat, like from attachments or SharePoint locations? Also, can we assign, can the current agent assign the real-time chat to another agent? So
yes,
continue
all the three scenarios are possible. The last three I remember. The answer to all the last three questions is yes. What was the first question? I missed that. Sorry.
Is the omni-channel available in tablet application?
In which application?
Tablet, Dynamics 365 for tablet and phone.
So right now it's only available with customer service application.
Okay.
So in future we may look at making the omni-channel available for other applications, but not right now. Okay. I'll be around for some more time. Questions, I can take those up offline as well. Thank you.